Okay.
Here we go. Hello, 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 my gorgeous people. And I have to give a shout out to Jonathan. Missed you, Jonathan. Not the same without you. I have a stellar guest for you today. I actually stalked Gary Arms. I read a post on Facebook and I immediately said, I want Gary on my show. And I sent him a cheeky message on Messenger and said, hello. I do a wee little YouTube show. You fancy joining it? Basically, I can't remember exactly because this was ages ago. You were very patient with me getting you on the call, but it was about your journey as a writer and your thoughts about yourself as a writer. And you're a professor as well. And I'd love to launch this call, start off talking about 10-year-old Gary, where he was, what his dreams and ideas and goals were. Could you tell us about 10-year-old Gary?
10-year-old Gary. Well, let's see. That would be fourth grade, I guess. I lived in Iowa. I lived in a factory town called Waterloo. My dad worked in the factory. I had there were five kids in my family, and my mother and father. My mom was a school teacher at a Catholic
Where,
school.
where
Catholic
were you
school.
and the kids? Oldest,
I was number
youngest?
two. I was the
Number
oldest
two.
boy, and my older sister has brain damage. I'm her guardian now. So in a way, I was the alpha child, because um, my sister was, I didn't have to compete with my sister because of her many disabilities.
Right.
So I
So
kind of
did you
think,
look after her when you were young? Did you
oh,
feel
I
the
didn't really
responsibility?
need to very much. She's pretty feisty, but she didn't get, I don't think she got bullied or anything. In America, you get segregated into special schools. So she was always in those kind of schools. And then she lived with my folks until they got old. And then she's been in like group homes and things like that ever since. She's older than me. She's like 2 years older than me. But I was like a nerdy little kid, kind of cute, had long eyelashes. I remember ladies would talk about that. I was good at school. I was not very good at sports. I loved reading. I read like everything, you know, you know, you I remember at breakfast I would read the backs of the breakfast food boxes. I would read the newspaper when it came in. I wanted to read like all the books in the school, and I read like most of them.
Did you have a
Just
favorite genre at that
Oh,
age?
I would read anything. I mean, I liked it if it had a boy. I would like it if it had I'm sure I would have loved Harry Potter books if they had existed, but I would read a lot of fiction, but I would read a lot of nonfiction too. I like popular science. Anyway, when I was like 10, so I read a lot. I would in the summertime when everyone else would be playing baseball, I would be sitting under a shade tree reading a book.
Me too.
Even
Wuthering
outdoors. I would
Heights.
always have a book with me because I was thinking things would probably get boring, so I might as well have a good book with me. But
Were
the
you a
library, the
dreamer?
public library is my favorite place when I was 10 years old.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but were you a dreamer? Were you like, when I grow up, I'm going to be, or were you just living in the moment? Just give me a book and I'm happy.
I had no idea what I would do in later life. I would know adults, like I thought, well, I don't want to work in a factory. I would think all the adults I knew, like they would be mailmen or I couldn't imagine doing any of their jobs. I used to think I would be a bum probably. So, I wasn't really sure. Could you have like a library card if you were a bum? I wasn't really sure. But I didn't really think about being a writer. I don't think I knew anything about writers. No one in my family was in art in any way. So I just didn't know anything about that. So I really, but I was smart, like we would take tests in schools and I would always be way up at the top. So, but my teachers would tell me, Gary, you can do anything. But really, I could hardly do anything except for read books. So it was puzzling to me. So I don't really think I had, like, I didn't think I wanted to be an astronaut or a baseball player or anything like that until I was like a teenager. And then I thought I'll be a writer. I'll be one of the people who actually writes books, but not in fourth grade.
So when you were a teenager, did you grow up with the idea that this was possible, that it would be easy, or how did you approach the writing?
I just started doing it every day. I think most writers, when we start, we imitate people we like, writers we like. There must be millions of people, young people writing Harry Potter type books or, you know, romances about fairies and vampires and, but I think everybody does that. And that's what I did too. But I didn't really start submitting until I was in high school. And I was very ambitious. I would submit to like the New Yorker, you
When
know,
you
you
were
know,
in high school, you started submitting?
yeah,
I know
yeah.
a lot of writers now, they're like adults and they're afraid to submit.
Yeah, and I've never really understood that because it's painless. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not, but I didn't, and I thought, in some kind of dim way, probably I'll get published and then I'll make a lot of money and I'll be famous and I remember when I was in high school, the famous writers were like Saul Bellow, Norman Mailer, James Baldwin. They were all on talk shows and TV. They'd be on the cover of Time magazine. Joyce Carol Oates, Toni Morrison, people like that. They were all like luminaries. They were part of the world
Yeah.
of celebrities. So I thought, well, that
Yeah.
sounds like a good job. I think I would like one of those. But then, I discovered it was, but I would occasionally, like editors would write me back. They would reject me, but they would write me a nice letter. So I would kind of feel like maybe this will work somehow.
But you say it's painless, but I think
To submit?
yeah, but it's because we're supposed to every 8 weeks. I can't speak for writers, um, although I've heard that they agonize over it. Every 8 weeks, we're supposed to reach out to publishers and give them a reach out. This is what I've been doing lately. I'm still here. It's kind of painless, but what happens is if you reach out to them, they don't have time to get back to everyone. They only get back to you if there's a book because there's a ton of competition and millions of people. So, although you know they're not going to get back to you, if you've sent 10 carefully curated reach outs and the universe delivers silence, it doesn't feel so painless, right? Do you not ever take the silence as a message when you submit?
Well, it used to bother me more, but I've probably been rejected thousands of times. I think, the first time you try something or do something, it's very nerve-wracking, and you're probably not going to be good at it. And that's true of writing. Any skill, I would think it must be hard to try out for, basketball in eighth grade. I
Yeah,
assume. But
yeah,
I don't know if it's any harder. It's probably easier than that. And then when I started submitting, all you had to do was put it in an envelope and send it out. You didn't have to deal with anyone face to face. And we didn't have the internet or computers and I think there were fewer people submitting. I think now there must be millions of writers. And
yeah.
I think all of the agents and editors, they must get hundreds of submissions every day. I don't really have any idea how they deal with it, but I don't think that was as true, because I was a teenager like in the late 60s. And then I started writing books and things like that in like the 70s and 80s, like that. And still, there's no internet, there's no computers. I just don't think as many people were writing. So, but because you don't have to deal with people face to face, it always seemed, what could happen? I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, what would happen? You just get rejected or you'll get ignored. But that happens
So,
in real life. You walk down the street, most people ignore you. To tell you the truth, I've never understood that aspect of writers, the fear of submission. It's puzzling. It's puzzling to me. I think it happens in their minds, like they like to scare themselves, or
And
you
I
maybe
also
get it
think
more than
I
I
think
do.
fear is contagious, and I think although people get a lot of support from fellow writers, I think they also they're contaminated with everyone else's fear. It's like everyone, I think, because if I think about it, an audiobook narrator's job, as is an actor's job, is to be rejected. That's the deal of the gig. You're going to be rejected about 95% of the time, and then 5% of the time you get lucky. So the honor of the job is being in the game and auditioning. So for a writer, would we say the honor of the job is writing and then putting your work out there? Was there a moment that you did get accepted or one of your submissions hit, or was there a moment that you thought, I am a writer right now? Or
Well,
was it gradual?
those are two things in my mind. To me, a writer is just someone who writes,
Yeah.
but if you don't write, then I think you're not a writer. That's how you tell if you're a writer. It's like, you know, if you play basketball every day, you're a basketball player. You may be a bad basketball player, you may be an untalented basketball player, but you are a basketball player.
You don't need
So I
someone else to
knew
give you a
really young
badge.
that I am one of these writers because I just like to do it. There's an awful lot of people, most people I think don't like writing. They just don't do it. I mean, like if I would wander around my neighborhood and knock on everyone's door, have you done any writing lately? I bet almost all of them would say, no. What? No, they don't do any writing. So I did a lot of writing, so it was clear that I was a writer. The other thing though, like to be successful, to like turn into J.K. Rowling or Stephen King or that continually eluded me. And I would once in a while, I didn't really hardly ever get accepted. I mean, it wasn't like 95% of the time I got, and 5% of the time. I got 100% of the time. I just get occasionally nice letters, like, well, we sorted like this, send us something else, those kind of letters. I used to get those a lot,
But
but
was
not
it
actual
important to you?
publications.
Was it something you were actively seeking? Was that validation important to you? Because you seem pretty confident in your love of the craft. So was the validation of that kind of success, was that a goal of yours? And how did you navigate that?
I don't think I really thought that way. I was a professor for years and years, and I would have all these young people. And at least in the United States, the vast majority of them, the only thing they really love is sports. They love their sport. But by the time they're in college, especially if they're at like a small college, they're coming to terms with the fact they're not going to be in the NBA. They're not going to be playing professional baseball. They're not even going to be at an enormous university playing at that level. So, but they keep playing. I mean, they just love to do it. And I
Yeah.
think writers are like that. I mean, I can see the grandiose dream, but most people don't get it. So, but if you really are that, you'll still be dribbling basketballs when you're 40 with your buddies at the YMCA. You just will. So that I never really understood that part of it.
It's like
And then
waiting to win the lottery, isn't it? Like, I'm not going to live my life until I win the lottery. Live your life
well,
anyway.
yeah, imagine, you know what it's probably maybe a little more like is falling in love. Like when you want someone to love you, and so you're trying to date and you're asking people out, and it's nerve-wracking, you know, can I love anyone? Will they love me back? I think for some people, writing and submitting is like that more than for me, and like if they get rejected, it's like I'm not even worthy of love. I think they're getting confused between love and just, the way the business works. Most writers will get rejected all the time, or most of the time. Or if they try to write a book, they won't finish the book. Or it's like you won't probably end up as a professional athlete. But if you love it and do it all the time, you'll still do it. and you'll adjust your dreams will get adjusted downward.
But maybe it's not downward because loving it is the point, isn't it?
Well, that's
So,
a curious thing. I was thinking about that when you approached me. The phrase you used was the writing life, the writing
yeah,
life. And I
yeah,
was trying to think of that, does it change a person to write, to just do that a lot, you know? Like does it like to practice a sport? And the thing I think that is kind of it's nice to try to do something difficult all the time, where you keep thinking, I want to do this better, just
yeah.
trying all the time, not 24 hours a day, but trying to do something well. And I think that's at the heart of writing for a lot of people. But I think there's other activities that are similar, where it's not necessarily an activity that you will make a living in. It's not necessarily an activity that will make you famous and rich, but you like doing it and you're trying to do it well. There's something about that makes me feel it's like kind of lucky, that if you have something that is challenging and that you're, fairly good at, you know, you're not, wildly commercially successful, but I think it would be hard to do it and not get any good feedback. You're probably getting good feedback from, somebody. But
Because you're putting your voice, you're saying my thoughts, my opinion, my voice matters.
yeah,
That's what you're
I think
saying.
it
I
I think it
count.
requires some arrogance, writing. All art, I think you need, especially when you're young, I think you need to be kind of overrating how good you are. Probably
Oh,
good.
I disagree. I think we're all that good, and that the people that don't try it are underrating how good they are.
Well, I don't think everybody can be a writer.
No, but
I
they
don't
could
think
be
everybody's
something.
funny. I don't think everybody can tell a good story.
They could be something, though. And I think people don't, I think writers that write have the guts to say, I am something, this is what I am. And people in other fields and other arenas that go on to do it have the guts to say, I'm something. And I think that the people that don't, I think showing up changes the world. I sound like a cliche. It's these calls. I've interviewed too many great people now. I'm like a total, I genuinely mean it. I think writers have the guts to show up and it changes the world. And we all
Well,
should.
sometimes more than others. But I don't personally think of it that way. I just think if I have a writing project, what is it? What do I want to do today? I want to write another chapter, another sentence. I don't I don't think about it like in terms of changing the world or things like that. I think of it as like a sort of a here's the thing. I'll give you a comparison. When this happened when I was in fourth grade, I lived next door to a mailman named Bob. Bob, he had kids my age, so I was in the house a lot. And Bob down in the basement had a train set. Oh my God, you should have seen his train set. He had this big floor made out of plywood, and then he had tracks all over it, and he made all the little houses, the little schools, the little churches. He
Wow.
carved out the little people. That there was like a policeman. There was a fat lady with a little dog. There was cops in school. There was a baker in white. It's this whole the Bob world. Oh man, did I want to go down there and play with Bob's stuff. But I was not allowed to go down there. There was some thought I might steal that little dog or the little baker or something like that. And the truth was I lusted after those characters. I thought they were just great. Well, Bob, that was Bob's world, man. That wasn't everybody's world. That was Bob's world. And he did not really try to sell his train set. He didn't really try to win prizes for his train set. He just that was his thing. Anyway, I think I'm kind of like Bob. I
I
feel I'm
love
I'm a
that.
Bob type person.
I admire the I've got a dear, childhood friend, Celeste Saldafar, who I knew when I was 5. and my father were like that. When they had a hobby, you better move out of the way because
Sure
they
thing.
loved it with a passion that was all consuming. I admire people like that that love what they love unapologetically, like
But for
Bob.
money, he delivered mail, you know.
Yeah, you still have to maybe get
I
a
think he cared more about his train set than he cared about delivering mail, but he was probably a good mailman. I
Well,
tried to be a good professor.
what about you being a professor? Was that what drew you to that? How did that come to be?
Oh, well, they kind of overlap. It was pretty clear by the time I was in my late 20s, I wasn't going to be successful as a professional writer, wasn't going to be able to make a living from it. So I thought, well, I should go back to college. And uh, as soon as I went back to college, I kind of just turned into the smart student again. I was comfortable in that. I was always comfortable in that world. And my professors liked me and, gave me the kind of rewards you get from professors and encouraged me to go to grad school. And as soon as I was in grad school, part of the package was that you start teaching. They have all these required courses for like first year students that the professors don't really like to teach. They like to teach something more specialized with, older students, grad students, and like that. But somebody has to teach all these required courses. They're called general education courses
Why do
in
you think
America.
that, why don't they like to teach them? Notoriety or just not as
Well, I
enjoyable?
think part of it, you'd have to ask them, but I think part of it is, and I don't know if that's 100% true, but I think a lot of them are like that, mostly because they have a scholarly specialty. And they're kind of, in their minds, the really cool thing is getting published and getting grants and things like that, and having not that heavy of a teaching load, getting sabbaticals, being a scholar,
Yeah.
more than teaching. Like teaching is kind of a little more low end in their minds, where but anyway, so that's how I started teaching. It was just part of the money that I was getting to go to school. And it turned out I had a knack for teaching, that I'm kind of the opposite of that. I find teaching really fun. I really enjoy being around young people. I like talk. Literature is like fascinating to me. So getting to talk about it and get paid for it, that was sort of lovely. And I liked meeting the other professors and having, like grad students for friends and all of that. So I kind of, I sort of, oh, and then my professors they would read things I wrote, and I often would like them. I always used to think you should quit your job and become an acquisition editor. That's how I see your future. Acquisition editor. That's what you need to do. And then you need to publish me. But still, it kind of helped me that I did that and that they knew
Yeah.
that and they thought of me a certain kind of a way, that made me a little bit distinguished compared to the other graduate students. But and te teaching turned out to be the way I could make a living because I was good at it. And that again, I sort of think of teaching as luck, not so much teaching as lucky, but I think if you can find a job where you can make a living that you're pretty good at and people appreciate you for doing it and it's challenging, I think that's really lucky because an awful lot of people don't really get that.
Yeah.
It's like falling in love. I thought that was lucky too. When I fell in love, took a while, she fell in love with me and we're still together like 50 years later. And I think, boy, that's lucky. So I've got to kind of go through life being in love and having a job I was pretty good at, and I got writing. So I didn't have huge success in writing, but it's always been like a cool thing that I do. And some
But
people
do
like
you ever, have you ever stopped and thought there's a thread through every single thing you've said on this call? Is this guy that goes through life and you just keep noticing the lucky. You just keep, oh, that was a good break. Oh, that was lucky. That was and I'm wondering if like I really, really believe that like if you think you're lucky, you are, and if you don't, you aren't. It's like it sounds like you're very much a glass half full kind of person. I mean, do you think that served you well?
yeah, I think so. My father was like that too, you know. Yeah, I can think like if you have really great expectations, I can see how that would be kind of crushing. I mean, maybe you do in fact turn into, James Baldwin or Saul Bellow or, you know, J.K. Rowling. Great. But Probably not. So if you sort of think, oh, what a horrible failure I am and how unlucky I am, and it just seems like kind of a dismal way to go through life.
But also if you look at a lot of those people, there's a difference between lucky and happy. And and you look at a lot of the people that quote unquote reached the ultimate heights of success. And if you read biographies or, listen to interviews, they're not always the happiest people with the smoothest ride in life. Whereas I'm listening to your life, it sounds not bad. You work on a craft you love 24 hours a day. You're teaching, you're changing the world, you're creating books with your words and your thoughts that are always going to be out there, and you're molding minds. And you're staying young because of the people that you're around, and you're in love. I mean, who could ask for more?
Well, I don't know if I'm really changing the world. I would have to see the evidence for that part.
You're
The,
changing the world. If you're
and
teaching students,
I'm no longer teaching. I've retired. Oh, that turned out to be good though, retirement.
yeah,
Retirement is, I don't know, did you ever read Virginia Woolf's A Room of Her Own?
yes,
Well,
yes,
how a writer has to have a room of her own. But the
yes.
other thing she says, though, which often gets left out, is money. The writer needs money and a room of her own. And I thought, well, now we're talking. Well, retirement for me was exactly like that. I had to give up teaching, which was kind of painful for me. I was sort of used to walking into rooms and having a lot of young people like me. That was like normal. That was like normal thing in my life. And I'm sure if you were like, I don't know, Adele or Beyonce or someplace, and you go out there, and there's like a million people laughing and clapping, and that must be really amazing and very hard to kind of walk away from. But teaching was kind of like that for me. It was like a really enjoyable thing that I walked away from. On the other hand, it kind of unleashed me as a writer because I could just spend as much time every day writing. I didn't have to prepare for classes. I didn't have to grade papers. I didn't have to go to meetings. I just many, many things. So since I retired, I wrote and published 4 novels, which I don't know if I would have managed that, when I was still teaching. So yeah, I feel like that's another lucky thing. I think the amount of time that became available to me. And then I got all of them published, just by small independent publishers.
Do you
But
have rituals? Because I read a book about writers' rituals, and there was some famous writer. I've got to look up her name, and I loved it. Her ritual to write was she would get like a pack of Marlboro cigarettes and like some booze, like some whiskey or brandy or something, and she'd eat chocolate in bed, smoking cigarettes and drinking and write. Like, and I love hearing about writers' rituals. Do you have a mug that you use every time, or a time of the day, or a corner of a desk, or?
yeah, the I get up every morning like at 7 a.m. and I take a
Ew.
shower. And then I go fix a cup of coffee. Then I come up here and I start typing. Every day I do that. But I might look at the internet and email and things, but I'll always be writing. There'll always be some part of that time of writing. And then I will drink another cup of coffee. Coffee is good for writers, I think. I don't know about the
Coffee is good
alcohol.
for everyone.
I don't know about the alcohol. I don't, maybe one drink, but I don't know. I never have tried to write drunk. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a good technique to me.
Yeah,
Oh, I
I
gotta
don't
tell
think
you a
she
story. I
lived
gotta tell you a
very
story about
long.
that. I used to teach students like how to give speeches.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and you were talking about how terrifying to submit, which I don't really get. But I'm telling you, students, many students, many people are terrified of public speaking. It's like, oh my God, they're going to die. People
I
will be
don't
looking at me.
understand that. I
Oh, it's
don't
just, yeah,
understand
it's
that.
and like you can see where they rank like things people are afraid of, like spiders,
Yeah.
cancer. Public speaking is higher than
Like,
spiders. It's
to
just
me, it's the most
astonishing.
delightful thing on earth. A whole bunch of people have to listen to you.
I
It's
think
like
it's a good thing too. I
amazing.
think it's a fun thing too, but I'm telling you, an awful lot of people need coaching when it comes to speaking in public. So and I would sit in the back of the room And I would say like Bob, and Bob would go up and give a speech, and then Sally, you go give a speech, and I would grade them on my rubric and everything like that. And so one time I had this girl, this very gregarious girl named Mary Beth, this lovely girl, and she's sitting up there with her back to me. So we get to her, and I go, Mary Beth, and she does not move. She just sits there, and I go, Mary Beth, and nothing. She's just the other kids are now kind of looking at Mary Beth, and they're all their backs are to me. Because I'm in the back of the room, and I go, Mary Beth, and she turns really, really slowly around to me, and tears are just pouring down her face. And I go like, Tony, we'll do Tony now. And it turned out, as she talked to me afterwards, I said, well, what happened? You're so gregarious. You love talking. You're not the least bit shy. And she said, well, she was terrified of public speaking. There's something about having to do a speech that was much more terrifying than talking to her friends. And so what she decided to do was she would knock down a couple of beers before class, just before class.
Yeah,
And
no,
that turned out to be,
a mistake.
put her into the sentimental land of weeping. So
But
I
I
recommend, don't drink alcohol when you're writing.
don't drink. You heard it here. And also that writer that did it, I don't think she lived a very long life. Not sure if it was
Was
a
it Dorothy
cigarette.
Parker? Dorothy Parker was the
It might have been,
alcohol.
I've got to look it up because I can't remember. But, and I was in a play, the last big play I was in, it used to drive me crazy. It was a three-parter. And the girl and the guy that were in it with me, the girl especially, made a really big deal about how they had really bad stage fright. Evidently, you're not a real actor unless you have horrible stage fright. I didn't get the memo. My favorite time is right before the stage opens and you're peeking out the curtains. You see the audience come up. I used to just love it. She'd be back every single night puking
Yeah.
before the performance. And it's like, I don't understand. How can you be an actor, be a writer, want to speak in public, and be that scared of it?
Was she good though when she performed?
Um, she was mean to me, so I'm probably not an unbiased.
There are, you hear about, like famous athletes that'll throw up before every game and things
Yeah.
like that. And sometimes, famous comics and, I saw David Letterman in an interview situation one time, and he's apparently, I mean, he was David Letterman. He's one of the most famous, funny, talky people on earth. And he used to get like terrified, before he came on. And then as soon as the cameras turned on, he was fine. But I
Comics
think
I
that's
might understand because sometimes people, because you want them to laugh, sometimes people won't laugh. But I mean, so Tad says, and Tad's got a good point, coughing is writing fluid. I have a hardworking Keurig next to my desk. Not everyone would consider that coffee, but the pods I use are Cafe Bustelo Espresso. Coffee is, I think we can all agree on coffee on this show. And, oh, Kim says comedians are dark natured.
they're
They seem
dark and
so
what?
dark natured. They
Oh,
seem
dark
so
nature.
lovely. I always thought if you lived with a comedian, you'd always be happy.
I know people that went into like writing comedy for television and
Right.
became quite successful. But in their world, a lot of comedians, it seems to come from a place of depression.
Oh,
And sometimes I think that humor is kind of defensive. Like a lot of people develop humor as a sort of way of defending themselves when they're young. But there are a lot of suicidal comedians, and it's not 100% true, but that there is a thing. And there's an aggression in comedy, especially if you're not making jokes about yourself but about others. There's a certain kind of built-in hostility to it. And
yeah.
man, I think they have a rough job. They have to get in their cars. I know people who did stand up, and they do like 5 minutes over and over, 7 minutes they try to do, but and they have to like go to a new club, and there a lot of times people are drunk, and sometimes there's six people there, and they have to try to get laughs like right away. You don't want to go like 5 minutes of rambling and then finally get a laugh. you're supposed to get a laugh like in the first 60 seconds. And it's so, I mean, it's so obvious. It's like I can just talk and think, well, I don't know, I'm probably doing okay. But if I'm a comedian, if you're not laughing, it's like, oh no,
And we
it's,
all think we're funny. I think I'm hilarious, and I can honestly say nobody has ever laughed at one of my jokes. Like never in my entire life. So
don't do stand up.
Tad says, I can't remember who it was who said that one comic scene might be a man dressed as an old woman in a wheelchair being pushed over a cliff. For someone like Buster Keaton, it would be a real old lady. So
He did all that
tell
physical comedy though.
tell
That's a
me,
thing. That's a thing though, that other people's pain is funny. Mel Brooks used to say that, if you get cancer and die, it's hilarious. But if I get a paper cut, it's tragedy. And I think, well, there I can sort of see that.
well,
We're much more sympathetic to our own pain.
I trained as a red-nosed clown at one point, one summer, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, ever.
It's like
Physically,
clown school.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Huh?
Um and the horrible thing is, I mean, he was like a quite famous clown that trained us, and to keep forgetting his name, I need to look it up and put it on a sticky note somewhere because people, but he was quite a famous clown. He came to London. It was an opportunity. It was a summer school. Jerry, I think his name was, and it was so intense. I think I was in shock most of the time. I just remember like thinking I'd broken every bone in my body at some point or another and being really proud of myself. And it was really, really, really intense. And when you see clowns, you wouldn't have a clue. They look like it looks easy. It's one of those things that looks easy. Stick the nose on, put some makeup on, and it's easy, but it's just way steep learning curve. Like audiobook narrators, they think, how hard could it be to read a book? Right? You
Seems
stand in
hard
the
to me.
booth the first time, you forget how to read, I'm telling you.
So you read like entire novels.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm impressed. You do separate voices?
Yes, we do. You're acting, you're producing, most of the time these days you're self-recording. You're then either shipping it out to an editor or you're professionally editing it. And so you have to know the book, and then you have to get in the author's head and try to interpret in an honest way what they want. Because people have sounds, voices in their head, and you're never going to be that voice entirely. So it's a little bit of a dance, a little letting go, you know, trusting the narrator. But when a writer and a narrator work together, it can be amazing. It can be
Someone told
amazing.
me, Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Stephen Fry read all the Harry Potters.
Yeah.
I was sort of amazed by them. But I'm in a book club, and quite a few
Yeah.
people, and Audibles are very, really popular. And in their minds, people like you, some of them are like stars. Like if that person is reading it, they will get it. You, you
Yeah.
know, you know
The
that
romance, the
it's a it's
romance
a it's a
narrators
very it's
get,
a kind of a niche audience, but
yeah.
people are passionate about people who can read in a way that really appeals to them.
Yeah,
They'll
it's
give up
it's
regular reading.
but the thing about it is, I mean, to be fair, we have to read when we narrate the book. So I just don't have the last thing I want to do after standing in a booth for 6 hours is read a book. Because
I can see that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I listen to audiobooks. Um, I listen to audiobooks for my enjoyment, but I almost lost my sight a few years ago. So that is when I started becoming, to me, there's no difference between listening to a good audiobook or reading the book anymore. It just hurts my eyes sometimes. Which brings me, let's segue here. Tell me about your books,
My books.
especially
Well,
that lovely one with the black
but
cover.
when before I wrote when I was still teaching all the time, I wrote plays.
Right.
which, by the way, is kind of the most thrilling kind of writing. It's not the
Why?
writing part is the writing part is the writing part. But the thing with plays, other people do them. They do like what you're doing. But
Yeah.
you know, a cast of people do them. So you're just every damn word you write, people say. That it's nerve-wracking and thrilling. It's very, very special. But
So
it's
have
very
your books made into audiobooks.
well, I just never really thought of it.
Tell me
Isn't
about
it
your
is it
books.
expensive? I
What
never really thought about it.
it'll depend. What genres are your books again? Tell me a little bit
Well,
about your
first,
book.
well, so anyway, well, then I retired just before the pandemic,
Right.
and all the theaters closed. I couldn't even
Right.
have people come over to my house and do readings. You know, I don't know if you remember, everybody's quarantined, and the hell
Yeah.
with theater. Theaters just shut down. A lot of things are shut down for a year and a half. So, you know, well, I gave up on plays for a while. So I had always written like plays about other kind of topics that were interesting to me, or, you know, and people would say, well, you love telling stories, so you ought to, you know, more autobiographical kind of things. So I wrote this book, is like an autobiographical novel about a kid growing up in the 1960s, which I did. And it's not really a memoir. There's, you know, lies in this. You
Let's
know,
see.
I'm
Which one
not
is
re
it?
oh, it's called Jack DeWitt is Clueless.
Can you hold it up so it comes up
Well, I
for the
don't know.
camera?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the cover on that one. It's a
Well, and
brilliant
then
cover.
when I was working on this one, a publisher wanted to publish when I was still writing it, and it got really long. So the publisher said it should be, you know, two books. So in this one, he's in junior high, and in this one, he's in high school. So, and it's written
Um,
in first person, you know, and it's, you know, civil rights and rock and roll and the Beatles and marijuana and, you know, anti-war protests and all the things that were going on in the 1960s, but seen through this kid, you know. Well, the second one's called Jack DeWitt is an Idiot. Mostly
you,
because that's what people always said when I was young. They would say, Gary, you're smart, but you're not as smart as you think you are.
I hate
Oh,
that. I had a boss tell me that.
anyway, but anyway, so and they're funny, you know, and you know, just all of the, you know, just sort of that kind of writing, you know, a
Yeah.
kid growing up. And then I wrote this one. Can you see this one?
Yes, yes, yes. I
Called
remember that.
Ronald, the boy who was allergic to everything. And that was because we had all kind of gone through lockdown.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that experience of being isolated. Um, and you know, do you know that old movie, The Boy Who Lived in a Plastic Bubble or something? The Boy in the Plastic
Yep.
Bubble.
Yep. That's what it made
And
me
I
think
thought,
of.
well, you know, in a way, we're all kind of going through that experience. So anyway, so I invented this kid who can't leave the room, you know, because of his condition. And well, you know, I was so used to the idea of like writing things and trying to get other people to like them and to
Yeah.
kind of like me if they like them. So I thought, well, what if this kid, he can't interact with anyone? He's like stuck in his room, but he has like a window and he can see other kids out there and he reads all the time. I could relate to this. And one of the things his dad gives him is a giant book about insects. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with insects. I don't know why. And so I happen to know quite a lot about insects. So he starts writing stories about insects that talk. And his mom like puts them on the door so kids can come and read his stories and like them or not like them. In a way, it's like a metaphor for what writers do
Yeah. Yeah.
all the time. So he writes these whole series of stories about talking insects. So I kind of wrote this just so I could have a you know, like a frame to put my talking insect stories into. Probably my least popular book, though. I think really people did not want to read about being isolated, but it's funny and interesting. And
But also
then
that
I
could,
wrote this
I would
one. These
want,
are all things I wrote since I retired.
but wait, I want to go back to the insect one real quick.
Yeah.
I would think if I had a child going through that whole pandemic thing, I would want them to read about that. The little boy finding ways to reach out despite being isolated. What? Why would you not want your child to read that? Why would you not?
And I thought it was a cool idea because this vulnerable kid, and insects have exoskeletons.
Yeah,
The outside of their body is like powerful.
yeah,
It's very protective. And
yeah,
a lot of times they have spikes and stingers and things like that. And it appeals to the kid because he would like to have a body like that because his body's the opposite. It's like he can't even really go out at all, because of his condition. And then insects are so weird. If you know about their behavior, their lifestyles, they're just freaky and strange and interesting. So it was fun. And I still think it's a pretty good book, but it
yeah.
has
I
not
think it's
really
a
sold
brilliant
well.
idea. Okay, next book is
Posey, this one. This one, um, it's about grad students, two women. And one is a bisexual alcoholic, not a nice lady. Takes no prisoners, will not suffer a fool. Um, and I knew a lot of people like that when I was in grad school, so it was kind of easy to write. But her roommate is completely the opposite. That Posey, the Posey is the roommate, and Posey is sweet and kind-hearted and beloved, and she imagines that she's a great poet. And she tells stories all the time. I like storytellers in real life, and I often use them as characters, and they're roommates. So it's this sort of, you know, the tough one and the sweet one, and grad school and poetry. There's a lot about poetry in that one.
so okay, so going back to you definitely should pursue audiobooks. It opens you up to an entirely new audience. There are, I mean, different narrators are suited to different books. Um, some narrators are able to take on royalty share. I think it's safe to say I have a narrator in the audience that I know sometimes enjoys royalty share.
That's you, Kim.
Yeah, yeah, Kim, and I've been known to take on royalty share. I I do a lot of thrillers or contemporary fiction. Kim does more genres than I do, I think, though. She does thrillers, contemporary fiction, and I think the crux of it is there's a narrator for every book. There are different routes that you can go down. People think they're very, very expensive. They can be expensive because every 8,700 words for me, some narrators are 9,000, whatever, is a finished hour. And a finished hour can take 2 to 3 to 4 hours to produce properly. So the trick is if a narrator will look at different things like your genre, your covers, your reviews, your Kindle sales, or sometimes, oh my God, I just love that book. It speaks to me and I've got to do it. And if you find the narrator that loves your book and you work with them, you can create magic. You really can because you are hiring a professional to interpret your work and when it works, it really, really works. Um, per finished hour, you pay for the hours of the book. Royalty share, you split I think it's 40%, Kim. Is it 40% and the narrator gets 20 and the writer gets 20? Yeah, and so you don't have any cost up front unless you split the editing cost with the narrator, which is just a small amount. So long story short, definitely look into audio. Be careful looking for royalty share though, because if you put it on oh wait, did I lose you?
Not me, but
Something weird came up on my screen.
hmm.
Bear with me 1 second. Okay. You don't want an AI narrated audiobook. You don't want somebody that's going to say they'll do your book and do a horrible job. So you do want to, when you hire anybody you trust with your work, to vet them. And if you are going the royalty share path, depending on your numbers, it could take longer to find someone. But if you're patient, then you find the right person. And it opens it up to an entirely new audience. You get people like me that had problems with their eyes that listen to audiobooks every single night, that fall in love with their writers. Do you know what I mean?
Lots of people love audiobooks, especially people who drive.
Yeah,
But I have quite a few friends. That's their favorite way to read books. Is
yeah.
you're getting the audible books.
Then you can give them free promo codes to your books when they're out in audio. So definitely pursue it. You can hit me up after the call. Um, I see Kim nodding along there. Highly recommend Kim, but it just depends. It just depends on what you're looking for because it's got to be right for you and the narrator. Um, it's lovely to work with people, and it's like what you said about your plays. You had us on board the minute you said that you loved seeing your plays come to life, because that's a necessary ingredient, I think, between narrators and writers is that little leap of faith and trust. And when that's there, it can be amazing.
I
So
believe you.
yeah,
I'm sold.
so, definitely. And even if it's not us, I mean, somebody else could have the perfect voice for your book. You could put it on ACX and somebody could audition and have the perfect voice. And you would both know right up front. And then it's like any business thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love the idea of all those books. I think they're amazing. And I think that there are narrators out there that would love them as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And what's your next book? Are you working on it already?
Oh yeah. I have two. Um, One is I think it'll be called The Year of the Murders.
Ooh.
And a young professor, easy for me, a young professor with two kids gets a job at a small Catholic college, and then nuns start dying. And that's kind of the hook. Anyway, and there's that one. And then,
You've got both
oh,
Kim and I going, now that you open with the dead. We're both.
well, anyway, there's that one. And that one I finished. It might get published. The same publisher that did Posey. We'll see. I don't know. Well, maybe. And oh, then I thought, do you know what Substack is?
Yep.
I thought just to kind of challenge myself, I thought it'd be interesting to see if I could write a book like a chapter a day until done. Like, 50
And
days,
then
50
people
chapters.
follow up, like in like what in what's the word for it? They used to do in those old magazines, like
Serialized.
yes, yes, yes,
Serials.
yes,
Yeah.
serials.
Yeah. And and you just have to be so fast because you couldn't constantly go back and rewrite. And then my least favorite genre is horror. But I know it's very popular and I know a lot of people like it. So I thought, well, I wonder if I could write like a horror novel in this weird way, where I wouldn't be like thinking a lot. I just, do it. So and I did it. I wrote 51 days, 51 chapters, except now I'm going back, and adding things and subtracting things. And it was kind of I had a few passionate readers that were like every day waiting for the next chapter, and they tended to be short chapters. And it's called The Head.
Kim
But
says, "What's it about?" She wants
well,
to
it's
know.
kind of it starts with these two garbage men and they're unloading, garbage cans, and one of them finds a golden head, you know, like, and ends up taking it home, and you know, it weighs like 13 pounds. Do you know how much 13 pounds of gold is worth?
Yeah, that's
And then it turns out it's a horror novel. So here's why I always say, in murder mysteries, the people who think, there's ghosts and witches and everything, they're stupid people. They're just wrong in murder mysteries. The rational explanation, that's the truth, not the supernatural. But in horror, it's completely the opposite. The person who thinks it's not supernatural, this head is not alive, that person is wrong. And the people so I thought, well, what if instead of a protagonist, I would have like a community. So there's like a bar and the regulars in the bar and this trailer court next door, and then they're all kind of reacting in different ways to this evil head. Anyway, that's my newest one.
I love that. Okay. And also there's a comment. Tad says, at this point, I hardly ever read books any other way. Some books don't have audio versions, but if there is one narrated by a human, I'll always pick that instead of print. Yeah,
It's not just Tad. There's quite a. I know quite a few people that are very similar.
yeah, it's a whole audience. I mean, I was a voracious reader. Like you couldn't get me away from books. I would like read walking down the street, read at school. But when my eyes gave in and life gets in the way, it's not as comfortable to sit and read on the fine print for too long. So give me an audiobook. Well done, audiobook. But I'm a bit biased. So
I'll check it
I
out.
I just have you ever thought of writing a blog on Substack as well? Because your thoughts about being a writer were they were compulsive reading. I love,
The
have you thought of being an essayist?
the That's what I do when I'm between projects because I write every day.
Yeah.
So like on Substack, there are some magazines, people do magazines, and one of them is called The Republic of Letters. And I'm guessing the thing that you read was about, kind of my life as a writer. It starts out, I'm 74 years old.
It was the pursuing success thing. It was
Yeah, not giving
what's
up.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so he put that on I got like 40 more subscribers just from that one article. It was kind of cool.
Because it was really
Anyway, and so
compelling.
tomorrow, oh, he also wanted me to write an article about teaching the way it used to be and teaching the way it is now, teaching then and now. So, and tomorrow he's going to put that up. We'll see if I get any more subscribers, but
Last
okay.
question. Last question. One piece of advice you'd like to leave the audience with, if nothing else, if they don't take anything else from this call, one last words of wisdom or piece of advice you'd like to leave them with.
I recommend falling in love. I'm in favor of that with someone who loves you back. I just think that's like the best thing to do. Whatever you do, whatever else you do, if you can make that work.
Of all the advice we've ever had, I think that is the one that not one person can disagree with.
I know. I'm kind of
Thank you.
commonplace in my thinking, I'm afraid.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's exactly what we needed to hear tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Gary. This has been amazing. I can't wait to share this call with the audience. They're
Well,
going to
thank you
love
for
it.
inviting me. I enjoyed it too.
Thank you. Thanks, and thanks to the studio audience. Mwah!
Mm.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Goodbye.